Like you, killers can equip up to 4 perks. To play against killers, you must know what they have, because the right perks on the right killer can give them an advantage. You can't survive successfully if you don't know what you are up against, and knowing what perks the killer has can mean the difference between life or death. I will be going over the most important perks that you will encounter in games, and explain how you can recognize it. I won't be going over every killer perk, I'm just going over the important and more common ones that you must know about so that you can survive. First up, we have Nurse's Calling. Nurse's Calling is the best killer perk in the game, in my opinion, and it is really strong. So many killers run this perk. So if you don't know about Nurse's Calling, it can get you killed. What Nurse's Calling does is it reveals the auras of survivors who are healing or being healed when they are within a 20, 24, or 32 meter range of the killer. So basically, if you are in the heartbeat radius of the killer and you are healing, they will see you. However, not all killers have the same size tear radius, such as Hag, who has a 24 meter tear radius, or Michael Myers in Tier 2 has a 16 meter tear radius. So especially against these killers, you have to be very careful about when and where you choose to heal, because you won't always know that they're coming after you until it is too late. So how do you know the killer has Nurse's Calling? Well, I can guarantee you, unless the nurse is a new nurse, 100% of nurses will run Nurse's Calling. So that's one killer you can say for sure to never heal in their tear radius. But for other killers, you can usually tell a killer has Nurse's Calling if you start healing and they come immediately after you and know exactly where you are. That's a dead giveaway that they have Nurse's Calling. For example, here I am healing by a pallet and the trapper immediately comes for me instead of trying to search through the area first. So this is how I know he has it. So how can you counter Nurse's Calling? Well, you have to be very aware of your surroundings, very aware of what's going on in the game. Make sure to heal in areas that you can use to get away from the killer, near pallets or windows. Do not heal in the corner of the map where the killer can easily down you because you have no escape route. If you want to be super safe, you can also never heal in the tear radius of the killer. You never want to heal in the nurse's tear radius because she'll teleport right on top of you. And then with killers that have smaller tear radius, just be very aware. If you see someone get injured, that means the killer is probably chasing them. If the killer just picked up somebody, then you're perfectly safe healing where you are. You just have to try and be aware of where the killer is on the map, and you will do perfectly fine. Number 2. Hex No One Escapes Death, commonly abbreviated as NOED. What NOED does is that once the exit gates are powered, if there's a dull totem remaining on the map, it becomes a hex totem. While the hex is active, successful attacks will put survivors into the dying state automatically. Their cooldown on successful and missed attacks are decreased by 8%, and your movement speed is increased by 4%. So you can see how this perk is very important to know about, because it just takes 1 hit to down a survivor instead of the normal 2 hits. And it is a perk that a lot of lower level killers may run just because they have no better perks to put on. So you have to be very aware of this, because NOED is a perk that can guarantee a 4 kill even if no one has been hooked the entire match. This is a perk that you don't know the killer has it until he hits you with it, or if the gates are powered and you see a hex totem appear, then you will know the killer has NOED. But once the killer hits his first survivor after the gates are powered, it will tell everybody if he has NOED or not, because you will see the icon appear on your screen as well as the picture of the little NOED hex. If it is green, that means it is not the rank 3 version. It is the purple one that you have to be cautious of. To counter NOED, all you have to do is destroy all 5 dull totems on the map before the exit gates are powered. Now, this is something that is kind of easy to do because other survivors that know about the perk will also be looking out for dull totems and destroying them. So just know, if you kill all the 5 dual totems, the killer will not get the use of this perk. Number 3, BBQ and Chili. What it says is that after hooking a survivor, all other survivor auras are revealed to you for 4 seconds when they are further than 40 meters from the hook. Every time a survivor is hooked for the first time, the killer will gain a 25% stackable bonus to all blood point gains. And this blood point bonus is only awarded post-trial. This is another really strong perk for killers, because this means that if they hook somebody and you are far away from the hook, they will be able to see your aura for 4 seconds. And this allows them to locate your general area and chase you down immediately. It is arguably probably the second best killer perk out there. So how can you tell the killer has BBQ and Chili? Well, it's quite simple actually. After hooking a survivor, a killer who has this perk will usually do a 360 trying to find the auras of survivors. Now, if you do not have a visual on the killer when you hook somebody, but they come straight for you and know where you are, then you can be pretty sure they have the perk BBQ and Chili. A lot of killers will also immediately leave the hook and just beeline towards a survivor they have chosen. And if the killer does not see anyone with BBQ and Chili, they may hard patrol the area searching for the survivors that are going to go for the save. To counter BBQ and Chili, there are multiple things you can do. First off, what you can do is if you realize the killer is hooking somebody, you can try and get within that 40-meter range of the hook before they accomplish the hooking action, and that way you will remain invisible to the killer, but they will still know you are kinda close, you're 40 meters around the hook. But you could just get close enough to not show up for those 4 seconds and then leave and go do a generator or whatever else you were doing. Another potential strategy is trying to hide behind generator auras. And this is kind of a little more complicated to do because you have to make sure the generator is in front of you, is basically in between you and the hook. Because it is harder for the killer to see through the generator auras, but it has to be positioned in just the right way that the generator aura will cover yours up. And then you can try to mind game the killer with this knowledge of they have a visual on you for 4 seconds. So you can do this in various ways, like you could get inside a locker right before they hook someone and just stay there for 4 seconds, then get out and walk away and see if they come over and check the locker. Or you could say work on a generator or work on a dual totem for 4 seconds. Once that 4 seconds has passed, you just walk away, go to another area. Another strategy is to walk in the opposite direction of where you're actually going for 4 seconds in another attempt to mind game the killer. So you just have to use that knowledge of the killer has vision on you for 4 seconds to your advantage. Hex Ruin is a hex that affects the survivor's skills at repairing generators. 2, 3, or 4 survivors will be affected by Ruin, which will cause good skill checks to result in a 5% regression of the generator, and great skill checks result in a 0% progression. The hex persists as long as the related hex totem is standing. So you will know if the killer has Hex Ruin pretty fast, because as soon as you get the first skill check on your generator, it will look red instead of white, and you will also get this notification on the side that says Hex Ruin, and it'll be green or purple depending on the rank of the perk, and then you will also get this hex totem symbol on the side of your screen. And this symbol is going to stay there until the hex totem has been cleansed. So basically, this Hex Ruin will remain in effect until someone finds that hex totem and destroys it. Now on the red skill check circle, if you get a good skill check, you'll see this little spark as it regresses by 5%. And then if you get a great skill check, well, nothing will happen. It will look like you are just working on the generator still. Hex Ruin is a commonly used killer perk, and that is because it slows down generators a lot. And that is because if you have multiple survivors on a generator, say we have 3 survivors on one generator, well, each of those survivors are going to get multiple skill checks. And if all 3 of those survivors keep getting good skill checks, that generator is basically going to have no progress, because every time one of them goes a little bit forward, it's going to go 2 steps back. And another reason it slows down progress is because a lot of people, as soon as they see the Hex Ruin, walk off and look for the totem. So how do you play against Hex Ruin? Well, you just have to find the Hex totem and destroy it, but this may not always be the best course of action, because you know that the other members on your team will also be looking for this Hex totem. Now, if you spawn right next to it or something, yeah, go ahead and cleanse it, but if you don't see it anywhere nearby, maybe the best thing to do is just work on a generator. Because when only one person is working on a generator, your chance of getting a skill check is way less than if 3 people were on that generator, and you can probably finish it, although it will be a slower progress, but you will finish a generator, and hopefully one of your teammates will have destroyed the Hex totem, and you guys will have at least 1 generator done instead of 5 generators left to go. Because the longer you are in a match, the more deadly it becomes, because the killer gets more of an advantage as people get on the hook and as pallets are wasted. If you decide to work on a generator instead of looking for the totem, make sure you're the only one working on the generator, because even if you have just another survivor with you, it's just going to make that generator way harder to do with Ruin up. So a lot of times when I see there's Hex Ruin, I just let someone else go for the totem and just try to get a generator done, because I know the people on my team want that totem, and so I just leave it to them and take the generator. And another thing killers will do is sometimes they will camp their totems, so sometimes it's not always the best idea to cleanse the totem, because if the killer just camps their totem and refuses to chase you further, then it's probably faster just to do the generators than trying to harass the totem. Hex Thrill of the Hunt. For each duel and Hex totem on the map, gain a token. You get 6, 8, or 10% more blood points for actions in the Hunter category for every token. Survivor cleansing speeds are reduced by 4, 5, or 6% for each token. And you gain a notification when someone starts working on a Hex totem. The Hex effects persist as long as the related Hex totem is standing. So Thrill of the Hunt is commonly paired with the perk I mentioned earlier, Ruin, and it's actually commonly paired with mini Hex perks. And this is because of the important fact that it gives the killer a notification when someone starts working on a Hex totem. It is pretty easy to figure out if the killer has Thrill, because just start working on a dual totem, and it will tell you whether Thrill is in effect or not. And the reason you do a dual totem is because the killer does not get a notification for that, so you can check if they have Thrill safely and not put yourself in any danger. To counter Thrill of the Hunt, just pay attention to the description here. It says for each duel and Hex totem on the map, the killer gets a token. So to counter Thrill of the Hunt, you want to try and destroy as many duel totems as possible. Once you destroy all the duel totems on the map, then that cleansing speed reduction will be way less, and therefore it will be easier to destroy the Hex totems before the killer will be able to get to you, even though they get a notification. Now, you are still putting yourself in a very dangerous spot when you start cleansing a Hex totem while Thrill is in effect, but if you can get rid of Thrill or whatever the other Hex perk is, it puts you and your teammates at an advantage because you have eliminated 2 out of the 4 killer perks. Monitor and abuse. While in chase, your terror radius is increased by 6, 7, or 8 meters. Otherwise, your terror radius is decreased by 6, 7, or 8 meters, and your field of view is slightly, moderately, or considerably increased. So this perk gives the killer a more stealthy option because they may be able to approach you a lot faster since their terror radius is a little smaller. Now this perk is especially deadly on Michael Myers because in Tier 1, Michael Myers with Monitor and Abuse do not have a terror radius at all. And then in his Tier 2, he will only have an 8-meter terror radius, making Michael Myers harder to keep track of and just a more deadly-ish killer in chases because he's that much harder to keep track of. So I can tell you for sure that probably 95% of Michael Myers run Monitor Abuse, and the small percent that don't run it probably don't have it yet or are working up to it. because that is such an important and crucial perk to have on him, because it just makes him so stealthy. Now the perk can also work well on other killers, because like I said before with Nurse's Calling, you know, if you hear the heartbeat, that the killers can probably see you healing. But with Monitor and Abuse, it can make their heartbeat a 24-meter radius, and then they will be able to see you before you notice that they are there. Now this perk can be difficult to tell if the killer has it if you are new, but once you get some experience in the game, you will be able to easily recognize it. The key feature to recognizing Monitor and Abuse is that the heartbeat is pretty irregular with killers who run it, where you will hear their heartbeat when they're close to you and chase, but then it suddenly just stops. There is no it slowly fading away or anything, it just immediately dead silence, no heartbeat sound. You can also tell because you just recognize the distance of the normal killer terror radius, and you notice that this killer has a smaller one. So experience in the game will help you determine if the killer has this perk or not. Now, there's no real counter to Monitor and Abuse. You just have to be more aware of your surroundings than you would normally, because the killer can easily sneak up on you, especially if it's a Michael Myers. Now, say you've been working on a generator, the killer comes by and kicks it, and then you get back on the generator, and you get this insane skill check that's the smallest skill check you've ever seen in your life. Well, this is because of the perk Overcharge. Overcharge says that you overcharge a generator by performing the damage generator action. The next survivor interacting with that generator is faced with a moderately, considerably, tremendously difficult skill check. Failing the skill check results in an additional 3, 4, or 5% generator regression. Overcharge is another perk that is pretty easy to tell if the killer has it, because all you have to do is wait for them to kick a gen and then get on it. If you get the skill check, they have it. If you don't get it, they don't have it. The skill check will always happen the second you touch the generator, and there is no getting by it, because even if you get off the gen, the skill check will still explode. The best thing you can do when facing a killer with Overcharge is just mentally prepare yourself for the smallest skill check ever, and then get on the generator and go for it. The survivor perk that will kind of counter this is Technician, because you have a 50% chance of not blowing up the generator when you fail a skill check. If you ever wondered why you couldn't see a survivor's aura that has been downed, well, Knockout is the culprit. Dying survivors' auras are not revealed to other survivors when they are standing outside of a 32, 24, or 16 meter range. You can tell the killer has Knockout because you will not see a downed survivor if you are too far. You will hear the scream, but you will see no aura revealed to you. So this creates a kind of tension in the game, because you won't know for sure the killer has picked up that survivor until they've been hooked. And it will allow the killer to slug people if they so choose. And slugging is basically just leaving a survivor you downed on the ground instead of hooking them right away, because you want to try and find where the other survivors are. So Knockout is unique because there are actually survivor perks that can counter Knockout. So to give you a list of these perks, Bond counters it because it will reveal the aura of survivors within a 36 meter range of you. Empathy is another perk that counters it because it has an unlimited range and will show you where injured survivors are. And there's also Open-Handed, which will increase the range of you and your team's aura reading abilities by 8 meters. Now, all of these perks except for Open-Handed are pretty viable perks that can be used successfully in your normal build. I use Bond all the time for keeping track of where other survivors are in relation to me and the killer. And Empathy is really good in situations even when the killer doesn't have Knockout, because you can find injured survivors pretty easily that do not have access to self-care or a medkit. Now, if you have these perks on, you can tell if the killer is running knockout because their aura will be in yellow instead of red. Other than having those perks, the real counter is being map aware, knowing where that survivor was being chased, knowing which side of the map the killer was on, and just kind of guessing to the best of your ability where that survivor went down, and if the killer is even slugging them at all. This next perk isn't commonly used, but it is worth mentioning because if you don't know about it, you can get yourself killed. So this perk is Insidious. By standing still for 4, 3, or 2 seconds, you reduce your terror radius to 0 and become stealthy until you move or act again. So this basically means not only does the heartbeat disappear, but the red stain of the killer will also disappear. It is quite easy to tell if a killer has Insidious because when Insidious activates, their heartbeat instantly disappears. Instead of it gradually fading off as if they're walking away from you, it just instantly is gone. So just from that, you will know the killer has Insidious. And a good way to tell the killer has Insidious is for killers such as Trapper. When he's setting his trap, sometimes Insidious will activate because it takes about 2 or 3 seconds to lay down a trap. Now, I've seen killers use this to camp exit gates before, where they will try to hide in an area where they can see the control panel of the exit gate to prevent anyone from opening it. And they also use it to camp the basement because they can hide by the wall and then you won't see them by coming down the stairs. So you just have to be very careful when a killer has Insidious because they could potentially be waiting for you. So to counter this, you just have to be very observant of your surroundings. Look for the killer even if you don't hear the heartbeat or see a red glow. I myself have not actually encountered anyone using Insidious in a really long time, but it is worth knowing about it just because if you don't, you can get surprised, and that is never a good thing to be caught off guard. And then there's just one last perk I want to mention just because I've noticed more killers have been running it lately. Unnerving Presence. What Unnerving Presence does is that survivors within the terror radius have a 6, 8, or 10% greater chance of triggering a skill check when repairing, healing, or sabotaging. Triggered skill check zones are reduced by 40, 50, or 60%. So you will know the killer has Unnerving Presence because when their terror radius gets within range of you, you will see these icons appear on your screen. And you will also notice that the skill check is way smaller than it normally is. Now, I think what throws off a lot of people is how small the skill check is, but it really isn't that much harder to hit these skill checks. You just have to keep calm and just try and treat it like a normal skill check, and not get psyched out by the fact that it's so much smaller. And if you want, you can run Technician, because Technician will also semi-counter this perk, since you have that 50% bubble, safety bubble, of if you miss it, you may not make the generator explode. And these are the essential killer perks I think you have to know about. A lot of these, I just put them in because of how common they are, and if you're new to the game, you won't know what all these icons mean. So I just wanted to clear up some of those confusion things that can happen. And then I also just prioritized perks based on how deadly they are to you as a survivor. I will be making another killer perk video of the other killer perks I think are important to know. They just aren't as crucial to your survival as these perks are that I listed in this video. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this video has helped you know more about your enemy, the killers. And as always, good luck out there in the fog.